You see, every John Mayer fan knows his signature guitar. But every John Mayer fan also knows that over the years he's dabbled with a number of different guitars that have made their way to different albums, shows, tours, you name it. And as a John Mayer fan myself, I felt like I know almost every single one. But of those, the one that seems to perplex me the most consistently, the one that always catches my eye in the most unique way, is this one right here. Okay, that's kind of nasty. The Duesenberg Mike Campbell signature model. Now, I had seen John Mayer play this guitar for a number of years, but the big question always sort of floated around my head. The question of, well, why? I mean, this guitar is so different from a Strat or anything else we're used to seeing him playing. So why would arguably one of the most famous guitar players on the entire planet, who could get his hands on any guitar he wanted, choose to play something like this? Well, that's where I felt like I had to find out. Now, in order to do this, I wanted to keep it very simple. I would answer 3 very specific questions on why a player like John Mayer would gravitate towards something like this. Number 1, who is Mike Campbell? Number 2, what the heck is a Duesenberg? And number 3, and most importantly, probably the culmination of all of this, what makes this thing right here so special that it would provoke not just John Mayer, but several of the world's most famous guitar players to actively seek after it? Well, fortunately, we're here to try to answer all of these questions. And of course, it all sort of started with the first one. Who the heck is Mike Campbell? Yo, bro, so I had a question. I saw your Mike Campbell video pop up on my feed like randomly a couple of weeks ago. It feels like you're a super fan, like you actually know what you're talking about. So I was wondering if you could, let me in the door. Like, I have questions.
Well, I felt like they came out of the gate swinging from their first couple records. And I'm not a music historian, but it always impacted me like, wow, they always had something in the chamber that was powerful. And Mike was always, to me, the engine driving that, at least on the guitar side. But for me, where I was like, wow, okay, I'm really noticing this guy as a guitar player I want to be like, is your Into the Great Wide Open, Mary Jane's Last Dance, Wallflowers, Full Moon Fever, because he played on Tom's solo record, and everything kind of around 80s, 90s was where he impacted me the most, because I just loved that no guitar was like unheard, unspoken.
So this is my friend Corey, and he happens to be one of the best guitar players I've ever met. And recently, I found out that he also happens to be a very big fan of Mike Campbell. Who would you say are his, influences? Who is he learning from?
Well, I could probably be more prepared if I read the book that I just got. Literally just came in the mail a couple days ago. Haven't even gone through it yet, but I'm sure that tells me more than I would, sort of conjure up on my own. But, whenever I listen to Mike play, I hear Chuck Berry. I hear all of the sort of founders of rock guitar. I'm sure it's Chuck Berry. I'm sure there's B.B. King in there. I'm sure, a lot of the blues guitar players of the Mount Rushmore that we put on there.
Yeah.
I can hear it all in Mike's playing. Mike's playing is just so tailored for every song all the time. And it's kind of the thing, I wouldn't necessarily say it's different, because it's always right. It's just always right for the song, to the point where it's kind of like, oh, I wouldn't change a thing after you painted that painting, or you made a piece of clothing or something. No stitch is out of place. It all seems to go together. And that's not always possible for a lot of musicians.
Yeah.
Great session musicians have that quality. But Mike always comes up with, to me, with the part that takes the song over the edge. And that's I think what makes him exceptional. Maybe not different, but exceptional as a composer.
And I didn't want to just stop at learning about Mike. I knew that in order to move on to my second question, I had to start understanding the very basics behind Duesenberg. And I'm not even just talking about the history. I wanted to know how these guitars were made from like the ground up. And I knew the best way to find all this out was to go straight to the source.
The way the instruments are made is we do pre-production in our own manufacturing facility in Croatia, which is a country in Europe that's it has a very deep tradition of musical instrument making over the hundreds of years. And there's a very good supply of very good wood and things like that. So we built our pre-production facility there. They do the woodworking and the basic lacquer work. They ship it over to Hanover in Germany. We do some of the routing for pickups some of the time, but we do the plaque. Every Duesenberg instrument is plaqued. So, and we do it in a very extensive way that's not very typical, which takes a lot of time, but we think the results are superior. And then the instruments are assembled and set up in a very long process. Like it takes like 4 hours to set up a Duesenberg instrument.
But not even just how they were made. I started asking questions about the philosophy behind these guitars. Like, what are you actually trying to do with these things beyond just the Mike Campbell signature?
We never just go half the way. We always try to make something that can potentially be a companion for life. Personal preferences, and these put aside, of course, that's fine. But we always want to make a guitar that you can theoretically buy as a beginner and keep playing for the rest of your life. Because we all know these situations. We start out learning an instrument. We buy a sort of cheapish instrument. After a couple of years, we realize now we need something better now. Maybe something with a little bit better pickups. A couple of years later, well, this guitar actually doesn't play that nice. I'm now noticing that because I get better. I need a guitar that is set up in a better way and plays better, and also has better pickups, maybe a better tremolo system. And so you climb up the ladder, spending a lot of money. And we think that a Duesenberg, theoretically, you can buy it as a beginner and play it for the rest of your life without having to buy a new instrument every other year.
Now, this is where things started to get a little bit more interesting. You see, you would probably think that the final step in me figuring out what makes a Duesenberg, or what made John Mayer want to play this guitar would be to just play it myself and actually figure out these tones. But that's not exactly how it all went down, because I knew that one of the bigger elements of this guitar was the Mike Campbell aspect. And just asking Corey Concilio about it, that's really cool to get a baseline starting point, but nothing's really going to click until you actually experience Mike Campbell for yourself. And this is where I started listening to a little band called Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers for really the first time ever in my life. And I ended up being quite surprised for a number of reasons. Number one being there are a lot more Tom Petty songs than I knew. I thought I just knew like Free Fallin' and I Won't Back Down. And number two, once I started listening to his solo work with Mike Campbell and the Dirty Knobs, I really felt like I got to see him let loose on guitar. And that resonated even more for me than with some of the Heartbreaker stuff. But alas, once I had at least started digging into the Mike Campbell of it all and into his solo work in the listening portion, I knew eventually I would have to get back to the John Mayer of it all, which included the biggest thing of all of this, actually playing the guitar and seeing what the tones were able to do. And that, friends, is where it really went to work. this thing first got here and I was interviewing the guys at Duesenberg, the thing that they consistently kept telling me to look out for was the out of phase positions in the middle. But me being a neck pickup sort of guy most of the time, the thing that really ended up catching me off guard was actually the P90. See, outside of Les Pauls, I had very little experience with P90s. And a lot of that came from guys like John Mayer, who were my really early gear inspirations, who I had really only seen play P90s on a very small handful of occasions. And I was trying to follow in their footsteps, so I really never did either. So hearing this kind of warmth in a single coil from the Duesenberg vantage point for the first time, because for those who don't know, a P90 is technically a single coil that's just constructed in a little bit of a different way, was a completely new experience. Actually, let me just show you what I'm talking about. This is where I got to the in-between out-of-phase positions and started to really experience a lot of what makes this guitar really special, especially in the context of finding out how John Mayer uses it, because what I realized was the first time that I ever saw him play this guitar at the CMT with Keith Urban, most of what he was doing solo-wise was with that middle position. This was literally the sound that introduced me to this guitar. Now, this happens to be the sound that the guys at Duesenberg actually warned me about the most, because the middle position on this guitar, as they told me, actually filters out certain frequencies. And they kept telling me again, over and over, we have complete confidence in our guitars, but this position, we know it's not for everyone, and it's okay if you don't like it. So I knew I would have to find out for myself. I went completely back and forth on this one. As someone who plays a lot of strats and absolutely hates the middle pickup on a strat, and usually when it comes to two pickup guitars really likes the middle position, with this being so different, I know that even if I do eventually end up liking this, it's going to take even more time than I've already spent with it. But that's when I got to take a different kind of leap into much more familiar territory, because I could get to the bridge humbucker, and that's where I got to see some of these Duesenberg pickups for the first time in a completely different fashion than with the P90. So the big question was really always something that I was going to circle back to. So with the general uniqueness of a guitar like this, both aesthetically and sonically, I was always going to come back to, why would a player like John Mayer want to play something like this? And I think in a lot of ways, it really comes down to one very simple answer. And I think it's because a guitar like this is really unique. When you're a guy like Mayer, who's probably playing a lot of strats, even though he has played a couple of Gibsons and a couple of other guitars, this thing is completely different, and that probably feels so refreshing. Now, on another note, on probably a little bit more of an ambiguous side, because there's probably a million reasons why John chooses to play this guitar, or why anyone chooses to play this guitar. And I'm saying this as a person, as someone who doesn't know John and has never formally met him, even though I did shake his hand this year in January, but tell me in the comments if you want that story. Simply because I've heard it from so many guitar players over the past months in researching this guitar. There probably is just a general respect for Mike Campbell as a player, as a lot of guitar players seem to have. That kind of respect can go a long way. And even in the little bits that I've listened to over the past couple of months with the Heartbreakers and with his own stuff, I can see why people love him so much. And I can see why people love this guitar so much. But I don't think it matters what I love or what I think. What matters is what you think. So please let me know. Have you ever played a Duesenberg? Do you know anything about Mike Campbell? What is your favorite thing about these guitars in general? Please let me know in the comments. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I think it's absolutely insane that I had never taken the time to really listen to a player as iconic as Mike Campbell, but I am so glad that's changed. Thank you so much to Corey Congilio and Mason Marangella and all the people who helped me learn more about both this guitar and Mike Campbell. It's just been a really cool couple of months, but if you want to know anything more about this guitar right here, I'll have all the links in the description. Make sure to check them out. It's one of the best ways to support the channel, if that's something you want to do, or if you're just curious about any of the other gear we used in this video, amps, mics, heck, even the camera. Make sure to check out those links. Also, thank you so much to my patrons. There's some extra exclusive content on there if you want to join the community. Like and subscribe if you had a good time. Most important of all, have a fantastic night.